Welcome to the Property Profits Real Estate Podcast, the show where real estate investors talk strategy, capital, deals, and growth with your host, Dave Dubeau.
You know, I've interviewed a gazillion people who've given us tips, tricks, strategies, and ideas around how to invest in real estate, single family, multifamily, commercial, industrial, mobile home parks, self-storage, you name it, all of that good stuff. But at the end of the day, the difference I've seen over the years between people who are successful and those who aren't is all about the mindset. It's all about the thinking or how we think about things. So our special guest, zooming in from balmy New Jersey today, Jonathan Greene, that's his specialty. And he's a fellow podcaster. He's a very accomplished real estate entrepreneur, kind of grew up in real estate, literally. And these days, he does real estate investing. He's kind of more on the passive side with multifamily. He also runs a very interesting podcast called Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. And if you're a millennial or whatnot, that's a play on a very famous book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Or motorcycle repair, I should say. So Jonathan, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me, Dave. I'm excited to be here, talk to your audience.
Yeah, so give me kind of the Coles Notes version of what got you into this whole crazy world of real estate investing, because you've done a few other things. I think you were a lawyer and a prosecutor and a defense, like lots of stuff going on.
Yes, I get bored easily. Well, the long and the short of it is my dad was an attorney as well, but he made all his money doing real estate investing. And I grew up a kid of a real estate investor. If we were driving in the car, we would literally pull over the car at a second's notice if there was a for sale by owner handwritten sign. And we were buying foreclosures. I would go to foreclosure auctions. I was collecting rent as a teenager as a landlord. So I really learned direct from the source and learned the old school way, which will play a lot into what we talk about, because I believe that's still the best way to do real estate is the way that I did it growing up. I love technology, but people are losing the mindset to really be a good real estate investor inside technological advances. They're losing the person-to-person contact that every real estate investor, I'm sure, has told you is the crux of their business.
Well, actually, a lot of them are really starting to lean into the whole AI thing and trying to get rid of people altogether.
Yeah. That's a lonely existence.
It's a people business for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when it comes to the whole mindset side of things, Jonathan, I mean, I know on your show you've interviewed a lot of people and different walks of real estate investing. What are some of the commonalities or some of the keys to success mentally that we should be working more on?
Self-awareness is definitely number one. I think that a lot of stories you and I have both heard have been the kind of disaster story, and then I figured out my way out of it. My goal is to help everybody not do that. You know, every story doesn't need to be that classic character arc of losing it all and then coming back. Why don't we just not lose it all? And part of not losing it all is reducing your ego and understanding where you stand as a person in a transaction and how that person-to-person relationship matters. I've made very few bad deals, but the worst decisions in real estate that I've ever made were usually ego-driven or emotional anger for me, not like emotional sad. And I think if you spend more time working on yourself as a person, real estate becomes so much easier, because the calmer you are, the more you can be a better participant in a transaction. And that means when the other side is emotional, which happens all the time, you become the calm voice, and then that makes the transaction go smoother instead of two people butting heads, which of course I was a trial attorney. I did 250 jury trials. I was used to doing this. Yeah. And when I stopped being a trial attorney, I was doing that in real estate. And I quickly found out, like, this isn't meant for real estate. You have to really tone it down. And that took me a long time to figure out. But I really think it all starts with the self and understanding what your role is and what your goals are, and understanding that other people have their own stuff going on. It's not always about you.
Well, that's a really interesting point. So you touched on a little earlier that, you know, your dad was old school with real estate investing and we should be kind of you recommend people go back old school. What does that actually mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, if I just think about how we found properties, a lot of the ways that we found properties were we would go to yard sales every weekend between 8 and 12 yard sales. I was a kid. I was just trying to get baseball cards and like a football or something. My
Yeah.
dad was talking to them. I'm like, why are you talking to them so much? And then I realized later he was making an offer, cash offer on the house. They were obviously moving. That's why people generally have yard sales. And then he was pulling over at every for sale by owner, writing it down, calling, doing one-on-one, saying, "Hey, I'm a local investor. I'm a real person. I have real money that he earned himself. He came from nothing." And I think he was an expert at dealing with people. He was, I would say, a very caring landlord, not a good landlord, but a very caring one, which turns out to be good for the tenants, not good for me who had to come home in the summer and collect all the rents that were 6 months behind. But I think if you just think of how what originally was walking for dollars, then biking for dollars, then driving for dollars, that still works. People are resisting using their eyes and going to Google Maps, which could be up to 2 years outdated, and they're trying to do that out of state. The best way to do real estate is to understand your local market, if it's accessible to you as an investor,
Mhm.
or going to your out of state market that you really want to invest in and understanding it for at least a solid week before you go back and try to transact there.
Wow, I love those words of wisdom there. Like so simple yet so brilliant. Like I've done creative deals and stuff and done a lot of the finding motivated sellers stuff, but
Yeah,
never once thought of going to yard sales and chatting people up
it would
that
still
way.
work.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Like it's
Yeah.
smart, 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 smart. Yeah, okay, very cool. Now, the other thing you just mentioned, which resonates with me for the wrong reasons, is the whole thing about being uptight. Like you came from a lawyer background fighting
Yeah.
tooth and nail in court to developing this Zen-like mentality. I'm still uptight, Jonathan. I should be. I'm way too old to be so damn uptight, but I am.
Yeah.
You know, hypertension, high blood pressure, you name it, I got it. And what did you find worked well for you to chill the hell out?
Yeah, it's a quick story. I was about 8 years ago. I was still investing. I was running a big real estate team. I have my own brokerage as well, and I was at the table with my kids, and the phone rang. It was a seller, and I told my kids, "Hold on, this is important." And right when I said that, I realized my whole life was just a mess. Just that in and of itself. The next day,
That's the
I put my
epiphany.
I told my partner she could take the whole team. I put my real estate license inactive for a year, so I couldn't use it even if I wanted to. Stopped investing, and all I did was work on myself, read books, and actually, that's when I started my first podcast, which was a podcast called Dad. And that, and then finding meditation and a lot of mindfulness things, which I think now is obviously much more, mainstream, but really was still catching wind for the mainstream then. And I don't meditate perfectly at all. I don't sit and, with my legs crossed in a quiet. I do it the way I do it, but I do it every day, and I have every day tracked it for more than 10 years. And it just provides me a baseline when I wake up to start the day with that. And it's helped me a lot because I do have a tendency to overreact or react quickly to things,
Mhm.
especially when they're personal. And now I go the other way and know I learned very quickly I needed to stop responding on email. And if I'm annoyed when I'm writing an email, just delete that, leave it for the next day and see if you like it. The next day, not once have I ever wanted to send the email. And after the first couple times I did that, now I don't even need to get to that. I just delete it.
Mhm.
Maybe the response is required, but whatever. I don't want to argue with people anymore. And I used to want to argue with people. And when you do argue all day as an attorney and then you go home, it's hard to just kind of like get out of that. And so I left being an attorney, when my kids were little, just because it was just too much. It
Mhm.
was too much arguing all day and pressure. And yeah, I don't know. I probably, if I stayed at that, I would be a judge now, but I probably have, worse heart things than I have.
Ulcers and yeah, all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff. Very, very interesting. Well, yeah, I'm tiptoeing around not so much meditation myself, but these days for a while now I've been practicing breathing techniques, which is
Yeah,
kind of
great.
it's about almost 20 minutes and it's deep breathing and all this
Yeah.
kind of, so it's kind of a meditation for me. And that helps me chill out a bit there as well.
I think a lot is meditation that people don't think is. I also go for long, aimless walks, with no intention of getting anywhere and I just look at nature. I can sit on a bench and just watch the grass move and the clouds move for as long as I have. If not for technology, I could be out there for hours, but it's like technology does drag me back, but I try every year to be less and less attached to it. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can be meditative for people doing your laundry, doing the dishes. It doesn't have to be strictly listening, but I've incorporated all those practices. But as I do it more, it just relaxes me in my regular life and then just start to realize that almost nothing is a big deal, especially in a real estate transaction. Like it doesn't compare to having like a sick relative. Like I lost both my
Right.
parents when I was youngish. And so I look at it like comparatively to that. My kids are healthy. That's the best thing ever. I have kids. That's the best thing ever. Like this one person, yelling at me on an email in a real estate transaction just doesn't move the needle for me.
Nice. That's a good perspective to have. Like it's
Took a
true.
long time.
Well, yeah, and I sure as hell don't have it and get riled up way too easily, but I'm more aware of it now and working on it, so I'm glad that you've kind of got that dialed in. So tell me about your podcasts. I
Yeah.
love the title, Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. So tell me a little bit about how that came to be and what your goal is with the show.
Yeah, I mean, it comes to exactly what we just went through. I
Mhm.
had done podcasts or two podcasts before, and then I was like, I always knew I was going to do an investing podcast. It was like lining up perfectly. Pandemic started. I'm like, now's the time. But I put it into a new, what my life had changed into. And I knew that I wanted to create the mindful approach to real estate investing, which is now really, I'm over 350 episodes. We're about to morph more into like financial mindfulness, not in terms of like, I want to teach people. Well, I mean, I do want to teach people what to do with money, but it's more about, I want to help kids understand money because I had such a great idea about what money was and how it worked and what it was worth and how I could use stocks and real estate from the time I was a child, a toddler. And I feel like kids are missing out because a lot of their parents are missing out. So part of our long scale of the mission of the podcast is really to end up opening educational facilities for middle school, high school, so they can really get adjusted, take it back to their parents, and they can have more mindful conversations around money. It's a very taboo subject for couples, for parents and kids that they don't talk about. And kids are not learning a drop about finances in school. So somebody has to help. And as I've gone through the journey with my podcast, I've seen that real estate as for me, it's always just been a part of a diversified portfolio, but it's a very important part because in America, you can get 30-year loans and it can appreciate. You can buy and hold. Not available to a lot of international investors in their countries. So I'm really kind of passionate about getting that message out there. But as we both have already talked about, I also want people to really check in on themselves and relax and understand that, when somebody else can just be having a bad day, or some people are just jerks,
Mhm.
because they haven't gotten to the space that we all want to get to. And the more I've seen that, the more real estate transactions have just become easy. Because one of the things that I always say that our biggest power in a real estate transaction is the ability to walk away. But if you have a
Mhm.
big ego, you will not walk away. You'll just keep fighting to fight. I have a lot of canceled deals because I just put up with no BS in a transaction. When I'm ready to walk, I'm just going to walk. I don't need a deal. Sometimes I want it, and then I don't even want it that much when it kind of goes off of the karmic highway. I'm just out.
I love that when it goes off of the karmic
You
highway.
you know when it happens, you can just
Yeah.
feel the transaction dipping and it's getting contentious and it's just like, is this worth my energy and time? And do I have an out at this time? And I usually always have an out. It's, happens a lot during inspections or
Mhm.
something that is arguable for the transaction that gives you a way to get out. And I look at it and that doesn't mean that I haven't gotten out of deals that later I think, I could have resolved that, but I don't regret anything. I don't miss
Yeah.
the transaction. There's a couple where I was like, I should have just let them have that one. But I don't fault myself for getting out because I'd rather hold very strong boundaries, which is one thing I'm very, very good at, than allowing people to keep coming over my boundaries and being a patsy for them.
Yeah, that's very, very good advice. Jonathan, if people are interested in checking out your podcast, finding out more about Jonathan Greene, where should they go? What should they do?
Yep. As you said, the podcast is called Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. That's the website, zenandtheartofrealestateinvesting.com. My hub site is trustgreen.com, and Green has an E at the end. And I'm easy to find on social. My handle is Trust Green, and all of my brokerage, the podcast, my cats, got a lot of Instagram accounts. But I'm easy to find. And really, I hope that this message hits one person who starts to think more mindfully about themselves and then takes that into their real estate journey and finds that if you can get yourself out of the way, you're going to create a much better portfolio for yourself and make better decisions.
Well, heck, I'm feeling more zen myself.
You too, Dave.
Jonathan, thanks so much for being on the show. This has been a lot of fun.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the Property Profits Podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, apply at daveinterviews.u.com.